On the morning of December 25th, snow was piling up in a residential neighborhood on the outskirts of Albany, a small town in upstate New York. Rachel Hartwell started the engine of her old Honda Civic while gazing at her 7-year-old son Ethan, who was sleeping peacefully in the passenger seat. Though his small face looked peaceful, he had been waking up from nightmares more frequently lately. "Mom, are we there yet?" Ethan asked, rubbing his eyes. "We'll be there soon. Grandma and Aunt Jessica are waiting with Christmas presents for you," Rachel smiled, though anxiety was mixed in with her smile. 2 years ago in November, Ethan's father Michael had died in a construction site accident. He was only 30 years old. Since then, Rachel had been living with her son in a small apartment, working at the local library during the day and doing office work online at night to make ends meet. After her husband's death, she had been managing somehow with the life insurance money, but they were far from wealthy. Her mother Barbara worked as a branch manager at the local bank. She was someone who valued appearances above all else and was known as a devout believer at the neighborhood church. However, her daughter becoming a single mother felt like a great shame to her, and she made no attempt to hide it. Her sister Jessica had married heart surgeon David Lawrence after graduating from State University, and they had an 8-year-old daughter Emily and a 5-year-old son Jacob. They lived in a large house in an upscale neighborhood, with an income reaching 6 figures. Since her marriage, Jessica had made no effort to hide her sense of superiority over her sister. When the car stopped in front of her mother's house, Ethan jumped out of the car with excitement filling his chest. Rachel was dressed simply in a navy sweater and jeans she had found at a thrift store. Meanwhile, children's laughter and the sounds of new toys could be heard from inside the house. "Merry Christmas, Mom," Rachel hugged her mother at the front door. "Oh, Rachel. That outfit again?" Barbara frowned at her daughter's clothing. "Well, never mind. Come inside." In the living room, a large Christmas tree was decorated, and colorful presents were piled underneath it. Jessica's children, Emily and Jacob, were already playing with new iPads. Jessica was sitting on the sofa wearing an expensive brand red dress, holding a champagne glass. "It's been so long." Jessica stood up and gave her a light kiss on the cheek. "Ethan's gotten so big. But it's such a shame he doesn't have a father." Ethan's expression clouded over. Rachel placed her hand on her son's shoulder. "Ethan, go play with Emily and Jacob." However, memories from last year's Thanksgiving came flooding back vividly. That day, at the family dinner, her mother had repeatedly said, "Children without fathers are really pitiful," and Jessica had meaningfully said, "Real families are important, aren't they?" From that night on, Ethan had started crying at night and couldn't concentrate at school. Even his teacher had started calling with concerns. "This year is going to be a special Christmas," Barbara said. "Jessica has brought us wonderful news. David is going to open a new clinic," Jessica said proudly. "Starting next year, our income will double. We've also decided to put Emily in private school." Rachel listened silently. She wasn't given the opportunity to talk about her own life. Actually, her job at the library was fulfilling, and her evening office work was going well, but no one bothered to ask about such things. "Now, everyone sit down. Let's start exchanging presents," Barbara clapped her hands to gather the family. Sitting on the living room sofa, Rachel observed the family's arrangement. Jessica sat next to her husband David, and their 2 children were spreading toys at their feet. Ethan sat alone at the end of the sofa, folding his small hands on his lap. "This is going to be another wonderful Christmas," Barbara smiled with satisfaction. "Especially Jessica's family looks so happy, it warms my heart just watching them." David, with the calm demeanor of a doctor, placed his hand on his wife's shoulder. "We're grateful to be able to spend time together as a family, Barbara." "Well then, let's distribute the presents," Jessica stood up. "Emily, Jacob, Grandma has special presents for you." The first presents distributed were for Jessica's children. Emily received the latest American Girl doll set, and Jacob was given an expensive electric fire truck. Both children cheered and tore open the wrapping paper, immediately becoming absorbed in their new toys. "Next is Jessica and David," Barbara handed over a large box. What came out was a luxury brand dinner set. Mom, this is Royal Copenhagen. Jessica exclaimed in surprise. Such an expensive gift, thank you. It's a dinner set worthy of your new home, Barbara said proudly. Successful families need things that match their status. Rachel sat quietly. The meaning of her mother's words was clear. Her mother was clearly distinguishing between successful families and those that weren't. Now, I have presents for Rachel and Ethan too. Barbara's voice had lost the warmth it had just moments before. What was handed to Ethan was a small box wrapped in obviously cheap wrapping paper. Inside was a used puzzle. It was immediately apparent that several pieces were missing. Thank you, Grandma, Ethan said in a small voice, but confusion showed in his eyes. Rachel's present was an inexpensive candle set like those sold at discount stores. It was worlds apart from Jessica's luxury dinnerware. Oh, it smells nice, Rachel said, trying to sound cheerful. Thank you. Practical things are best for single mothers, Barbara said coldly. You don't need luxurious items. Jessica laughed while drinking champagne. My sister is used to simple living. Our situations are different. Ethan was staring at the expensive toys the other children were playing with. Emily's doll could talk, and Jacob's fire truck made real siren sounds. Compared to his puzzle with missing pieces, the difference was stark. Ethan, puzzles are good for your brain, Barbara said. Children like you need educational toys. What do you mean, children like me? Rachel quietly asked. Well, children without fathers need special consideration, Barbara answered as if it were obvious. They must learn to accept reality. Ethan's hands gripped the puzzle box tightly. Rachel sensed the tension in her son's shoulders. It was the same reaction she had seen last Thanksgiving. David, how about golf this weekend? Barbara changed the subject. You could bring Emily and Jacob too, and we could go to the country club as a family. That sounds like a wonderful idea, David replied. The children would enjoy the pool too. What about Rachel and Ethan? Jessica asked maliciously. Oh, but country club membership fees are quite expensive. It might be impossible for a single mother. Well, Barbara pretended to think. Rachel is probably busy, and Ethan is still small, so he wouldn't be suitable for adult gatherings. Rachel looked at her son. Tears were welling up in Ethan's eyes. Even a 7-year-old could understand that he was being excluded. We want to cherish our real family time, Jessica added. We want Emily and Jacob to grow up in a stable environment. What do you mean by real family? Anger crept into Rachel's voice. A family where both parents are present and financially stable, Barbara said clearly. Children need a father. That's the natural order. Ethan began to sob quietly. Rachel pulled her son close. Ethan, it's okay. Mom, why am I different? Ethan asked in a trembling voice. Am I a bad child because I don't have a daddy? Those words made Rachel's heart feel like it was breaking. Her son's nighttime crying and nightmares that had continued for a year, his anxiety symptoms at school, everything was concentrated in this moment. Sister, it's necessary to teach children reality too, Jessica said coldly. Because you spoil him too much, he can't adapt. There are research results showing that children of single mothers are statistically more likely to have problems, Barbara added. Making him accept reality early will be good for him. Rachel stood up. That's enough. What is? Jessica raised an eyebrow. We're leaving. Ethan, put on your coat. Oh, you're leaving already? Barbara pretended to be surprised. But we haven't had Christmas dinner yet. We'll pass on dinner, Rachel took her son's hand. Ethan, let's go. But, Mom, Ethan said in a small voice. Did I do something bad? No, you did nothing wrong, Rachel looked at her son. You're perfect. Walking toward the front door, Rachel steeled her resolve. She couldn't let her son be hurt any more than this. Wait, Rachel, Barbara came after her. There's no need to get so angry, is there? We were just stating facts. Rachel turned around. Facts? Telling a 7-year-old child that he's inferior because he doesn't have a father is stating facts? I never said such a thing, Barbara waved her hands dismissively. I just want Ethan to have appropriate expectations. Single mother households inevitably have limitations. Ethan was listening to the adults' conversation while holding Rachel's hand. His small body was trembling slightly. What limitations? Rachel's voice was low, suppressing her anger. There are financial problems, and there's no one who can fulfill a father's role, Jessica called out from the living room. I don't want Emily and Jacob to worry about such things. Rachel took a deep breath. I understand. But we're really leaving. Wait a minute, Barbara looked troubled. The neighbors are watching. It would look bad if family members fought and left on Christmas Day. Appearances? Rachel smiled bitterly. That's what matters most to you, isn't it? At that moment, Ethan murmured in a small voice, Mom, aren't we really family? Those words made up Rachel's mind. She placed her hand on her son's shoulder and said gently, let's go inside one more time. But after that, we're really leaving. Barbara showed a relieved expression. That's right, that's good. We're family, so we should get along. When they returned to the living room, Jessica and David were playing with the children. Emily and Jacob were absorbed in their new toys, and the room echoed with the sounds of expensive toys. Ethan looked once more under the Christmas tree. Several beautifully wrapped presents still remained. Those wrapped in gold ribbon and red wrapping paper clearly looked expensive. Those presents are very pretty, Ethan said innocently. Those are special presents for Emily and Jacob, Jessica explained. They're gifts from David's parents. Ethan looked up with hopeful eyes. Can I pick one too? At that moment, the air in the room froze. Barbara frowned, and Jessica made an openly disgusted face. Ethan, those are... Rachel tried to stop her son, but Barbara spoke first. Only for real grandchildren, Barbara's voice was cold and merciless. Ethan's face twisted in confusion. Real grandchildren? Aren't I one? Jessica lifted her champagne glass with a triumphant smile. How pathetic to expect presents when you're from a single mother. The moment those words echoed in the room, large tears overflowed from Ethan's eyes. His small body began to shake, and his breathing became shallow. Rachel saw her son's symptoms and became worried. These were signs of the panic symptoms that had been continuing for a year. Mom. Ethan's voice was trembling. Let's go home, please. Rachel hugged her son. Ethan's small body was frozen with fear. It's okay, Ethan. We'll go home right away. Oh my, just because I spoke a little sternly, there's no need for such an exaggerated reaction, Barbara frowned. Children must learn reality. Reality? Rachel's voice trembled with anger. What you're doing to my son is abuse. Abuse? Jessica stood up. We're just stating facts. Children without fathers really do have problems. Look, he cries immediately, how unseemly. Jessica, stop it, David tried to restrain his wife, but Jessica continued. Sister just doesn't want to accept reality. Ethan is different from our children. His home environment is different, so it's natural. Ethan continued crying against Rachel's chest. Mom, am I a bad child? Do people hate me because I don't have a daddy? Hearing those words, something snapped inside Rachel. For a year, she had been preparing. 6 months ago, when she received Ethan's PTSD diagnosis from the school counselor, 3 months ago, when she began consulting with a lawyer, and this morning, on the way to this house, she had made up her mind. I've had enough, Rachel stood up quietly. What? Barbara asked. Rachel took out a red envelope from her handbag. The envelope was thick, and it was clear from the outside that it contained official documents. This is my Christmas present to you, Rachel quietly placed the envelope on the coffee table. What is it? Jessica asked suspiciously. Open it and you'll see, Rachel's voice was calm. Barbara picked up the envelope and pulled out the contents. The moment she saw the first document, her face turned pale. This is, what? Jessica peered over her mother's shoulder at the document. At that moment, the color drained from her face. It's a letter of estrangement, Rachel explained. A formal legal document. Created by a lawyer. Wait a minute, this is... Barbara said in a trembling voice. There's more. Look at the next document. The moment Barbara looked at the second document, a scream echoed through the room. It was Jessica's scream. $1 million? Damages? Jessica read aloud, trembling. That's right. Ethan's PTSD treatment costs, compensation for emotional distress, and future treatment expenses, Rachel explained matter-of-factly. But this is outrageous. Barbara shouted. Outrageous? For 6 months, Ethan has been seeing a specialist in child psychology. All the medical records are in there. Verbal violence at family gatherings is specifically listed as the cause of PTSD. David picked up the medical records. As a doctor, his face gradually became serious. This is a real medical diagnosis, David said quietly. Of course. Dr. Sarah Williams is a famous child psychology specialist in the state. Her diagnosis is valid in court. Jessica looked at the third document and turned even paler. Recordings? Testimony? What is this? For the past year, I've been recording our conversations. It's legal in this state with one party's consent. Also, Ethan's teachers, counselors, neighbors, everyone has seen your behavior. That's... Barbara's hands were shaking. Look at the last document, Rachel's voice was merciless. The moment Barbara opened the last document, desperate silence fell over the room. It was preparation paperwork for filing a lawsuit. Mom, Jessica. This is your final warning. For a year, I've been gathering evidence. Recordings, medical records, witness testimony, I have everything. If you approach us again, I'll take everything to court. As Barbara and Jessica's crying echoed, David looked at Rachel while placing his hand on his wife's shoulder. As a doctor, he understood the seriousness of the documents. Rachel, are you serious about this? David asked quietly. Of course. I've been preparing with lawyer Margaret Stevenson for 3 months. She's a family law specialist who handles many child abuse cases. Child abuse? Barbara protested tearfully. We never laid a hand on him. Physical abuse isn't the only form of abuse, Rachel's voice was calm. Verbal violence, emotional abuse, that's also legitimate child abuse. Especially when it's continuous and deliberate. Jessica was trembling while gripping the documents. But $1 million, where would we get that kind of money? That's not my problem, Rachel shrugged. It's the price for what you did to my son. Ethan was still crying against Rachel's chest, but as he listened to the adults' conversation, he gradually calmed down. Mom, I'm not a bad child, right? Ethan asked in a small voice. You're the most wonderful child in the world, Ethan, Rachel stroked her son's hair. Never forget that. Barbara stood up and walked toward Rachel. Please, Rachel. We're family, aren't we? Going to court over something like this wouldn't be good for either of us. Family? Rachel laughed coldly. Family wouldn't hurt a 7-year-old child. Family wouldn't use words like real grandchildren. But we were thinking of you too. Thinking? Rachel interrupted. There's more. Look at everything in the envelope. When Barbara reached into the envelope again, several more documents remained. The moment she saw the next document, her face turned even paler. This is contact information for Michael's family? That's right. My late husband's family. People you've never met. Jessica asked with a confused face. What do you mean? We heard Michael's parents were office workers. That was a lie, satisfaction crept into Rachel's voice for the first time. Michael's father, James Hartwell, is a successful businessman in the Texas oil industry. He's the founder of Hartwell Energy Corporation. Shocking silence flowed through the room. Oil business? David repeated in surprise. A company with annual sales of $500 million. Michael hated the idea of becoming an heir and chose to work as an ordinary construction worker. But his parents respected their son's choice. Barbara's hands trembled as she turned the pages. There were photos of a luxurious mansion in Texas and many photos of the Hartwell couple with Ethan, all smiling. These people are Michael's parents, James and Patricia Hartwell. Ethan's real grandparents, Rachel said proudly. They love Ethan with all their hearts. As their real grandson. Jessica was stunned looking at the photos. There were images of Ethan playing by a luxurious poolside, having meals with family at expensive restaurants, and most importantly, the happy expression of a child who was truly loved. Why did you keep quiet about this until now? Barbara asked in a trembling voice. Because I knew your character, Rachel's eyes glowed coldly. I know very well how you change when money becomes involved. Do you remember Uncle's inheritance? Rachel continued. When Uncle John died, you tried to monopolize the inheritance and caused trouble with half the relatives. It eventually became a court case and you ended up estranged from half the family. Barbara's face turned bright red. That was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Even Jessica looked at her mother. Mom, what really happened then? Mom tried to trick Uncle, who had dementia, into rewriting his will, Rachel cruelly exposed. Fortunately, Uncle's friend noticed and stopped it. That's not true, Barbara weakly denied. That's why I kept Michael's family absolutely secret. I could see that you would approach Ethan and use him for money. David sighed deeply. As a doctor, as a family member, he understood the seriousness of the situation. Rachel, I think Jessica and Mother's behavior was certainly wrong. But is it necessary to go to court? It is necessary, David. Rachel turned around. Ethan's PTSD is serious. Night crying, nightmares, anxiety attacks at school. It all started from last year's Thanksgiving. From the documents, even more detailed medical records emerged. Dr. Williams' detailed diagnosis clearly recorded the progression of Ethan's symptoms and the events that caused them. The patient showed acute stress reaction due to verbal attacks received at a family gathering a year ago, which subsequently developed into PTSD, David read from the diagnosis. In particular, continuous discriminatory remarks based on the absence of a father have caused serious damage to the patient's self-esteem. Jessica collapsed into a chair. I had no idea we were hurting Ethan so much. Not knowing doesn't excuse it, Rachel's voice was merciless. Especially today's comment about only for real grandchildren, it's all been recorded. Barbara opened the last document with trembling hands. It was an official letter from Hartwell Energy Corporation. This is, what? A notice of the establishment of Ethan's education fund, Rachel explained. James and Patricia have established a $10 million education fund for their grandson. Everything from Harvard tuition to future startup capital is covered. Everyone in the room gasped. $10 million? Jessica whispered. That's right. Ethan will never have to worry about money in the future. And he has a real family who loves him, Rachel smiled with satisfaction. A new home in Texas is ready too. We're moving there next month. Moving? Barbara stood up. Wait a minute, that means... Yes. This is the end. We will never see you again, Rachel's voice rang like a final judgment. But the damage claim. If you legally promise never to contact us or come near us again, I'll drop the damage claim, Rachel presented the condition. But if you break that promise, I'll go to court with all the evidence. David looked at his wife. Jessica, what we did was wrong. I think Rachel's demands are justified. Jessica nodded while crying. I'm truly sorry. We did terrible things. Barbara also sat down, crying. Rachel, please, we're family. If we were family, you would have loved Ethan from the beginning, Rachel took her son's hand. But all you did was hurt him. This is the end, Rachel stood up. Next week, a formal estrangement agreement will be sent by the lawyer. Please sign it. Ethan said in a small voice. And Mom, are we going to Grandpa and Grandma in Texas? Yes, Ethan. We're going to people who truly love you. As desperate silence filled the room, Rachel and Ethan headed toward the front door. 6 months later, at a beautiful mansion in the Houston, Texas suburbs, Ethan was enjoying chess with his grandfather James by the poolside garden. The face of the now 8-year-old showed no trace of his former anxiety. Checkmate, Grandpa. Ethan called out happily. Wonderful. You really are smart, James hugged his grandson. Your father was good at chess when he was about your age too. Patricia came over with lemonade. Ethan, did you finish today's homework? How is your new school? It's so much fun, Grandma. I've made lots of friends, and the teachers are kind. Ethan's eyes sparkled. Tomorrow, I have a presentation in class. I'm going to talk about Daddy. Rachel came out of the kitchen. Her expression was incomparably more peaceful than before. Ethan, it's almost time for your session with Dr. Williams. Okay, Mom. Ethan stood up obediently. His PTSD treatment was progressing smoothly, and the night crying had almost completely stopped. When Ethan returned from treatment, he excitedly reported to Rachel. Mom, Dr. Williams said I'm almost completely better. Really? That's wonderful. Rachel hugged her son. At dinner time, warm family conversation echoed in the dining room. Patricia asked Ethan, what would you like for your birthday next month? I don't need anything special. Just being with everyone is enough. Ethan's answer made the adults smile. Meanwhile, in Albany, New York, Barbara and Jessica's lives had completely changed. After Sunday service at church, Barbara was being avoided by other believers. The matter of Rachel and Ethan had quickly become the talk of the town. That woman hurt her grandson and was estranged from him. I heard she bullied her single mother daughter. Hiding the fact that there was a wealthy family. What a terrible story. Jessica's situation was also serious. Her husband David was deeply disappointed in his wife's behavior. Jessica, your behavior toward your sister and nephew is unforgivable as a doctor and as a human being, David said coldly. Hurting a child is the act I despise most. But David, I didn't mean to. Even if you didn't mean to, the result is the same. You deeply hurt one child's heart. Emily and Jacob also sensed their parents' change. The atmosphere at home was no longer as bright as before, and they understood in their childlike way that their father had become cold toward their mother. Mom, can't we see our cousin Ethan anymore? Emily asked sadly. That's... Jessica was at a loss for an answer. In fact, she had been writing apology letters to Rachel every night, only to tear them up. Barbara's position at the bank had also become delicate. In a small local community, personal reputation affects professional trust too. Barbara, you seem tired lately, are you okay? A colleague asked with concern. However, Barbara couldn't tell the truth. In Texas, Rachel was beginning a new life. She had started working at a local interior design company, and her talent was highly valued. Rachel, your design sense is wonderful, a colleague praised her. Client evaluations are the highest. Ethan's education was also going smoothly. With the Hartwell family's education fund, he was given the finest educational environment. Through piano lessons, science experiment club, and activities in the chess club, his talents were blossoming. One evening after dinner, Ethan asked Rachel, Mom, I sometimes think about the previous grandmas. But I'm not angry. Really? Rachel was surprised by her son's growth. Dr. Williams taught me. Everyone makes mistakes. But I have a real family here, so I'm okay. James and Patricia looked at each other and smiled. Ethan, you really are a wonderful child, James said. Your father would surely be proud of you. That night, Rachel looked at a photo of her late husband Michael and thought. Blood relations alone don't make a family. Love is what creates a true family. Ethan was now surrounded by people who truly loved him. That was what mattered most. Outside the window, a beautiful Texas sunset spread across the sky. As if announcing the beginning of a new life, the sky was dyed a hopeful gold.